Good evening. Welcome to Genesis Global Spiritual Center. I am Reverend Gayle Dillon, and this is the final curated conversation on religion. I am excited that you're all here to go through the process of where do we go from here? How do we, Edward and I were talking last month about the turnout, and we feel that possibly religion brings up a lot more for people than any of the other subjects we'll be talking about or have talked about. So something to think about. Where do you stand on religion? So we're going to find out where do we go next. So let's just take a moment to settle in and to shift the energy from however we got here, whatever we were doing before now, and just come to this place and be with each other in this powerful presence and the discussion around religion, and how do we step out as community into that realm of connecting with people from other faiths, other beliefs, and really listen and connect. And so knowing tonight is filled with amazing information, a to-do list that we can all grasp a hold of and be proud of, and go home and just know that we've done wonderful work these 3 months, and next month we move on into sexuality. So calling tonight good because Edward's here, and when Edward's in the house, it's always good. And I call it God, and so it is. Amen.
Hello, family. I am so excited to be back with Genesis, and I've been doing a lot of thinking around this idea of religious pluralism and religious belonging, and the tension around religion, and the big scary elephant that seems to be in the room when we talk about religion. And the first thing I want to do is, for our last night together, I want to reframe the way we even enter into the conversation. I don't want to say that it is a difficult conversation. I don't want to say that it is a challenging conversation. I don't even want to say that it is a courageous conversation. What I want to say as we reframe our entry point to the conversation is that it is a wonderful opportunity, that it is a privilege, and that it is a joy to begin to unpack together, to begin to learn together and discuss together and grow together. And it's just opportunity that is waiting for us to dive in and swim in deep water together. And so with that, I'm going to read a little bit from you know who, Bell Hooks, of course, as she talks to us about cultures of domination. When we think about religion, I think a lot of the pushback that we get in the conversation is that religion has often been used as a tool of domination, and people struggle to get over that hump and to talk about it as a joy to experience. So Bell Hooks says in her work All About Love, cultures of domination rely on the cultivation of fear as a way to ensure obedience. In our society, we make much of love and say little about fear. Yet we are all terribly afraid most of the time. As a culture, we're obsessed with the notion of safety. Yet we do not question why we live lives in states of extreme anxiety and dread. Fear is the primary force upholding structures of domination. It promotes the desire for separation, the desire not to be known. When we're taught that safety lies always in sameness, then difference of any kind will appear as a threat. When we choose to love, we choose to move against fear, against alienation, against separation. The choice to love is a choice to connect, to find ourselves in the other. And so tonight, as we ask ourselves as a community how we find wholeness in the other, we're really moving against the alienation that our own particular spiritual path can sometimes draw us into. I don't know if you've ever had this experience of talking to someone about spirituality, and they're talking about one thing and you're talking about another, and you look at them as if, I don't understand a word that's coming out of your mouth. and you're using similar terminology, but you know it doesn't mean the same thing in any way, shape, or form. That's that alienation that comes from the separation of being siloed in our own religious communities. So before I open it up to this broader discussion, I've also been thinking about the ways in which religion and our feelings about religion don't change through intellectual information. It's not enough just to have more information, right? Because spirituality lies in that heart place. And so it's very emotional. It's emotional, and it is connected to our habits. And so as we begin to think through, what do we do about religious difference in our communities? There are 3 categories I'd like us to look at tonight. What do we have to do in our heads? Well, or not. Let's see. I need a different color. That one's no good. What do we do in our heads? And then I want to find out, what do we do in our hearts? What has to feel different? And then lastly, what do we do with our habits? What behaviors have to change, right? As we start talking about being radically inclusive and being people of radical hospitality, how do we do that? How do we do that in our head? How do we do that in our hearts? And how do we do that in our habits? The head work might be, I have to learn more about other people's spirituality and other religious traditions. The heart thing may have to be, you know what, I really have to embrace the fact that I arrived at this place in the process of a journey. And maybe the habit is, I've got to stop saying bad things about other people's religion. I don't know. What we have to do as a community, though, is be really, really honest about what we need to do and name those things, and be free to name those things without judgment. So this is a suspended judgment zone, as always, and tonight we get the opportunity to say, what do I need to do in head? What do I need to do in heart? And what do I need to do in habit that will really impact our community around religious difference? Before we start talking, I really would like to invite, and I always put Gayle on the spot, I really would like to invite Gayle as the senior minister to share a little bit about what you see for a collective religious experience in this community. What do you vision that to look like, so that we can begin to steer these things toward the vision that you have as you lead Genesis? No pressure.
So it's interesting you should say that, because one of the things, and I'm not sure if this is going to answer your question, when I went to the social justice conference in San Diego that Bishop Flounder was at.
Yes.
To me, I would like to do something like that locally in Seattle, teaming with you.
Sure.
And because that whole conference around social justice was bringing spiritual leaders together, spiritual communities together to start building that bridge.
Moving toward hosting
an interfaith social justice conference in Seattle.
an interfaith social justice conference. This is so doable in Seattle. Okay, we have a goal. That's great. We have a goal. So, what do we need to do in our heads, right, to move Genesis and possibly Kingdom Family Worship Center and possibly Seattle University toward an interfaith social justice conference? What needs to happen in our heads? Okay, planning needs to happen in our heads. Absolutely. What else needs to happen in our heads? Planning. Visioning. Education. Form a committee. I think that probably goes over here under a habit. We're going to form a committee. What else needs to happen in our heads? Freedom. Anything else that what thinking has to change? So let me go back. In our head, we have to do some planning and we have to do some visioning. And what does that look like for the Genesis community to do visioning and planning toward an interfaith social justice conference in Seattle? Forming a committee. Okay? Is that something that's really an action item that we could walk away tonight and say, we're going to commit to forming a committee that's going to co-host an interfaith social justice conference in Seattle? We're two of the committee members. I've been voluntold. This is such a great pastoral move when you've been voluntold. Okay, I just wanted everyone, you kind of asked, I kind of said, sure. Absolutely, this is doable. Okay, so we have two committee members. Can I get a third? Can I get a third? Anyone is a third? We have 4 committee members. We have 5 committee members. We now have a committee. Okay, check. Committee of 5. Will someone take down the names of the committee of 5 so that you got it? It's there. Good. I need a person who can do that right there. I can't do that. Like by the time I get to the back door, who was on that committee again? Okay, great. That's done. Planning. What does visioning look like for that committee? Let's give that committee an assignment and say, this is what the vision needs to look like when you come back. What does that vision need to look like? Okay, let's look at that. Let's see. We need visioning. So we need a place, yes. We need a time. We need a budget. We need a yes from, okay, so we need community partners. Somebody said speakers. Okay, need maybe a conference blueprint. Agenda, that works. We need some goals. Outcomes. Anything else? Okay. What does education look like? What kind of education do we need? You need to know more about the other the religious communities. So let's see. So is that education that's going to happen at the conference, or is that education that needs to happen before the conference? Before and at. Okay.
I think maybe the education before would be anybody that's going to be involved in
Planning.
planning.
Mm-hmm.
Those to be educated about who's all involved, because there will be a lot about this
Okay.
in
So we've got our education is going to be at conference. Educational. So you know what? I think we probably already have our platform, right? So the platform for the conference, it sounds like to me, is probably the platform that you've already put together as a community. We started with racism, and then we moved to religion, and then we're moving to sexuality, and we're closing with politics. So it sounds like you've got a four-pronged platform already in place so that you won't have to reinvent the wheel. Yes?
Would you mind when you ask the question that we say it back to you, say what we said, because we really don't have time.
Yes, I could do that. So, in our heads, we need to be free. We need freedom in our heads. Let's talk about that. What do we need to be free from in our heads? Wow. We need to be free from judgment. Yes. Preconceived ideas. We need to be free from preconceived ideas. So we're walking in this with no judgment and no preconceived ideas. What else do we need to be free from? If we're going to be hosting an interfaith social justice conference, what do we need to be free from? Negativity, right? Like the host can't be really negative about it. That probably doesn't work too well. You can't allow the negativity to penetrate us. Okay, that sounds awesome to me. Anything else we need to be free from? We need to be free from expectation. Yeah, we can't be tied to specific expectation. Because I will tell you something about a social justice conference. The outcomes of the conference, you're going to set some outcomes, and then the conference is going to happen, and then you're going to see that the outcomes you set and the outcomes that actually outcome can be completely different. And sometimes in such surprising and beneficial ways, right? What else so we're free from some things. What do we need to be free to? Free to inviting all. That's important. So free to inviting all. Yes. What else? We need to be free to be inclusive. Anything else we need to be free to? We need to be free to be organic. What else do we need to be free to? We need to be free to fear. Okay. Free of fear. I was going to work with it. Okay. We need to be possibility thinkers. Now, that's interesting. We need to be possibility thinkers. Which means what? Thinking outside the bun. Open at the top. creative, all potential. Okay, we got some head work to do. Now, if we're going to move toward hosting an interfaith social justice conference in Seattle, what's the heart work that we have to do? Love. Ah. Integrity. Oh, yeah. Oh, forgiveness, yeah. I'm going to put this of self and others. What else? What other heart work do we have to do? Service. Mm-hmm. We have openness, but inclusivity and openness are not necessarily the same. I can be open to all and not be inclusive of all. Inclusivity puts the work and the onus of the work on me to invite you in. Openness says if you show up, we won't kick you out. And it puts the work on you, right? It says, oh, we're open to all. I don't know why they don't come over here and play in our sandbox. But we never step out of the sandbox and say, guess what? This sandbox is also for you. So there is a heart work of inclusivity and a heart work of openness that both have to be accomplished, right? Inviting them, right? That's the big difference, is invitation. So we have to be invitational. Yeah. Oh goodness, yes. We've got some heart work to do, don't we? This heart work list could probably go on and on and on and on ad nauseum. But I want to look at these are the first things that have kind of surfaced up for us, which means that they are surface heart stuff, deep heart stuff, but close enough to the surface that we're already aware of them. We don't have to go digging and rooting stuff out. So what blocks us from being positive around interfaith social justice work? Ignorance, yeah. Goes back to this education piece, right? We just don't know. And so when we don't know, it's hard to be rah-rah. What else blocks us from being positive? Negative people, right? Like, I'm not negative, but I have these negative people around me that are feeding me, I went excuse me, I had a co-facilitator on a class I was teaching, and during one of their lectures, they scolded the dominant culture. Can I say white people? Okay. They scolded white people for having meetings about race. They said, when are you going to stop talking about it and do something about it? And I thought, do we want people to stop talking in order to, there's this false dichotomy that says anytime we're talking about it, we're not doing something about it. But sometimes talking about it is doing something about it. And so people around us with dissonant voices that are contrary to the goal of what we're trying to do have to be shut out of our hearts. That's heart work. We've judgment and beliefs. Sure, they keep us from positive. What we believe about other people's religion, what we believe about other people's spirituality or lack thereof. So in our faith tradition, the biggest other is atheist, right? Or spiritual but not religious. We don't like those people. But what we forget is that atheism is a spirituality. It is its own spirituality. And it has a validity that must be addressed if we're going to have dialogue, right? And so this disdain is built up because we said they're not spiritual. Well, they're not spiritual like you're spiritual, but they're deeply spiritual. So this idea of what we don't know about other people and the ways in which we're dogmatic about our own position keep us from positivity. What about love? So love is this word that I find difficult. And I own my own problems with the word love. And here's my problem. I really love pizza. I do. You don't understand. I love pizza. Particularly pepperoni pizza with extra sauce and light cheese. It's manna from the gods. But I also love my daughter. And I really love my daughter. And I probably love my daughter quite differently than I love pizza. And my problem with the word love, particularly in English, is that it is attached to so much, right? Like, we love pizza, we love the Seahawks, we love our kids, we love Genesis, we love all of our neighbors, we love our partner, and it's just this thing. And I'm not sure we really know what we mean in any given circumstance when we say this thing. We know what we feel, but we don't know what we mean. And so I'm curious, when we say we have to do the heart work of love, what is that work we have to do? Mm-hmm. So to come from a place and how do I do that? Yeah.
So it's hard to describe. For me, it's really looking at something honestly and seeing past what I believe is right or wrong, and just seeing what it is.
Looking past what we think is right or wrong and seeing something for what it is, withholding judgment, not using our heads, but using our hearts. Now that's lovely. It's also really individual. So how do we as a community approach this work from a heart place of love? I'm coming. Getting the right love energy around that conference. That's a community thing.
I was going to say, love to me is kind of an
Unconditional acceptance. Okay, I think we can make that a community norm. I think we can say that the norm for this conference is unconditional acceptance. That's way we get out of our head and get into our heart as a corporate body. Because I think sometimes what's very difficult for us when we do this community work is so much of it is left to the individual. And when one individual goes astray, we don't have a metrics by which to bring that person back into the fold of the overall vision. And it's not to say you're a bad person and naughty and we're going to put you in the corner. It's to say, remember, our corporate commitment is unconditional acceptance. And what you're offering in this moment is a condition. And so because our community norm is unconditional acceptance, we're going to go another way. And you're not bad, and you may keep that feeling, but it just isn't going to work here for this, right? And we all have had that happen to us, where we sign on for unconditional until we run up against a condition. And then we say, now I'm all for unconditional, provided this isn't the conditions. And then someone has to say, remember, that's a condition, and then we all get back on the same page. Yes, we're co-creating that experience together, because no one of us can really foster a loving environment by ourselves. And I don't want to be responsible. I don't want to be the person on the committee that's responsible for a loving environment. Like, I'm not going to sign up for that. But if we take a group, right? Like, this wasn't very loving and it's your fault. I don't want to be that guy. But if we say together, you know what, we're going to have a very loving environment, and we co-create that together, I think it's doable. Authenticity. And this came up more than once as we talked about heart work. It came up in multiple ways, and we said it with multiple words, but it all boiled down to authenticity. And again, much like love, I'm curious as to what will that mean in a communal function. Like, how is a community fostering authenticity around an interfaith social justice conference in Seattle? What does that mean? Rising up, I didn't put being real. Rising up, being real, and reaching. Somebody has done a really, really good job of getting this slogan to stick. I just want to commend whoever's the branding expert on that, rising up. Wow, they are doing an amazing job. I just want to say that. I have no idea what rising up, reaching out, and being real means, but I am on board, let me tell you. Okay, so tell me about rising up, reaching out, and being real, because that's the authenticity that you're speaking of. So what does this mean? Because this is all one thing here. Give me the quick and dirty version of rising up, reaching out, and being real. Being real, rising up, reaching out. Let me get it in the right order. I don't want the off-brand shoe. Being vulnerable. You people in your Brene Brown, I hear her. Okay. I love her. Okay. Being vulnerable. Now, what's that going to mean for us in this process? It's going to mean some people are going to tell us no. Some people are going to say, yeah, we don't want to play in your sandbox. Thanks for the invitation, but we have our own sandbox over here, and we'd love to not be in yours. But you're still going to be invited. Yeah. And I will tell you, in this work, that gets hard. It gets hard. And it's really hard not to take it personally when people say, I don't want to play with you. Like your 5-year-old self says, what? Why not? I'm great. You would have a great time. You should play with me. You don't want to be my friend, right? Particularly when it comes from unexpected places. It will be one thing if the KKK says to you, no thank you, we'd not like to come to your conference. You will say, okay. If Seattle Spiritual Center, is that the name of it, says to you, CSL Seattle says to you, we don't want to come play with you. That will feel very different. And we should know that getting into the work. It looks like creating curiosity. And how will we do that? How will we make the world curious about this Interfaith Social Justice Conference in Seattle? What was the one that you went to? What was it called? That's okay. How did they get you there? Social justice got you there. Who invited you?
Agent. So it was put on by Unity, Agape, and CSL. So Michael Beckwith was there, Ken Gordon was there. They had a Unity thing. Person was at Unity, and Bishop Connors.
Yeah, they like to hang out together. I think they just create opportunities to pal around. Don't tell anyone I said that. Don't tell anyone I said that, but I think they're just palling around. Hot buttons. Hot button statements. Hot button brochures. I think social justice is a pretty hot button. I think this is kind of a buzzword.
And then if you add the 4 platforms.
Absolutely. 4 platforms. So the other way to create curiosity is whose faces are going to be attached, right? Like, who are you inviting to facilitate your workshops? I think that is a wonderful. So we just want to keep in mind the faces, right? And that's a job for this committee of 5 as we begin to plan these things out, is to say, okay, what faces are doing the work in the area, and what faces have drawing power, and what faces are underrepresented that don't have any drawing power, that need to be here, that people need to hear, have to hear, can't live without hearing, and don't know they need it yet. Right? I think that was the genius of Oprah, by the way, in her 29 years on the air. She brought people on that we really needed to hear and had no idea we needed to hear them. Except for Dr. Phil. No one needs to hear him. I'm joking. It was a joking judgment. But no, she really did a great job of introducing the world to people we didn't know we wanted to hear. And we heard from them. So that's great. Okay, let's move to this idea of integrity. Integral to what? To what must we be integral to do this work? To ourselves, to our own values. So what happens when being integral to our own values runs up against a partner organization that has different values? How do we maintain integrity in that moment? I hear you, I see you, and I acknowledge you. And how do we do that and not fight for power and control? Creating agreement. So this committee of 5 is going to have to come up with some agreements for partnering organizations. Because we will not be able to maintain integrity if we don't have agreements amongst the partner organization. There's one advantage I have of working in the Office of Ecumenical and Interreligious Dialogue is I get to see religious organizations try partnerships all the time. And some of them work really, really well. And some of them don't. And normally, my partner, Dr. Trice, who came here, and my colleague, Dr. Trice, and I, can go to the first meeting, and in the first meeting we can say, this is going to flop, or this has a chance to be a success. And you know how we know every time? We listen for who's integral in the room and what the agreements are between the organizations that are trying to partner. And invariably, loose agreements lead to failure. The stronger the agreement in the room, the more likely the success of the partnership. Openness, I think we understand. Honesty, I think we understand. Forgiveness, we understand, but we should talk about. This heart work of forgiveness as we move toward hosting an interfaith social justice conference. What has to be forgiven in ourselves and what has to be forgiven in others if we're going to see this through to success? We've got to forgive ourselves for being right and others for being right. Ooh, that's good. We've got to forgive ourselves for being right and valuing being right more than relationship. And we've got to forgive others for being right when we just don't want them to be. Note to self, forgive wife for being right. Right? And remember to say you were right. My 13-year-old daughter has a real hard time with that. Like, she will go to the wall for what she believes. And when she discovers that she is wrong, she will stand on the wall and wish you well as you continue your journey. I'm like, just say you're wrong. Just nobody likes to know it all. She's like, I was misinformed. Yes, and that led to you being on the wrong side of this discussion, which means you are really upset that someone misinformed me. The word is wrong. Okay, we could go with that one too, right? We have to stay in this place of forgiveness, which means we have to forgive ourselves for leaving other spaces and for not leaving other spaces soon enough, and for holding on to ideas that didn't serve us well, and not being mad at the people who still have those ideas because they may serve them. And allowing people to be okay with their spiritual ideas, their political ideas, their racial ideas that we have figured out don't serve us. There's a lot of forgiveness, a lot of the time in the whole process, and we haven't even got to the conference yet. Like, nobody's even said anything yet. But we've got to do this work of forgiveness. Service, inclusion, what was that? They have made choices for their choice. That's right. Absolutely. We have to be invitational, non-judgmental, and this last one is a big one. We have to be willing to be uncomfortable. Yikes. I'm going to be really honest with you. I'm on the committee and I don't want to be uncomfortable. I just don't like uncomfortable. But I also know that this work won't get done without some level of discomfort. Like, someone's going to say something that makes you go. I spend most of my time on the university campus with this look on my face.
So you know that's not a good one.
It's not. It really isn't. But I really, they should be like 100 pictures of me, like, because I'm really thinking, is that what you meant to say?
You said that out loud.
Out loud. You do know that went past your teeth. Curious. Okay. All right. You're gonna double down on that one. All right. Right? Because we get uncomfortable. Sometimes we're uncomfortable with ourselves and with how we feel in a given moment. And sometimes we're really uncomfortable for other people because you want to fix it and you don't want them to say that thing that people are going to remember that they said, that they're going to wish in a year that nobody ever heard them say on the other side of their journey. But we have to be okay with uncomfortable. So let's talk about habits. We've got a big habit up here. We've got to form a committee. We've got our committee of 5. I mean, we have done our work, right? Let's go home. No. What other habits do we have to examine, to change, or to implement in order to see this through to fruition. Letting go of control. Is that hard for us? Letting go of control. Yes. And what does that mean? Is that just as individuals? Is that as a congregation, as a community? All of the above. Yeah. It's active listening. I'm going to put active listening up here because before we leave, I want to revisit that and give us some tools for the work. Is that okay if we do that? Active listening, letting go of control. What else do we have to, what other habits do we have to either stop, start, ramp up? Know the history. Oh my goodness, yes. So this is a head thing and a habit thing. It's so funny. I work with people and they say things like, no one in Seattle has ever done this before. It's like, ever? No one. These are such strong words for you, 18-year-old who has just arrived here from Milwaukee. I'm just so glad we're going to do this, Dr. Donalson. No one in Seattle has ever even thought to do this before, except for this lovely lady who's sitting next to you who's been doing that work for like 60 years. Oh my goodness. It's this whole thing of knowing the history. If you don't know the history, you don't know where the potholes are. You don't know where the fires are. You don't know where we want to invite this organization and this organization, and you don't know, like, the person who started this organization stole all the money to start the organization from this organization, and we might need a little reconciliation work between the two organizations before we invite them to the social justice conference. And yes, we want to be inclusive of all, but we would not like to see a brawl break out. Just saying. Got to know your history. Got to do a little research. What else? What other habits do we need? Yes. Oh my goodness, yes. That's not a problem for Genesis though. You guys follow through, let me tell you. Follow through, yeah. Oh, is this where the agreements will be created? Yeah, we gotta craft the agreements. Yeah, maybe we already have a paradigm for them, huh? What else? What other habits? Support. Oh my goodness, yes. So here's the thing. You can host the conference, but if Genesis doesn't show up, I'll be making that face. What happened? Right? Because if you as the host don't support the work, then when people come to the work, they make a decision that the work is not important. If you haven't taken it seriously as a community, then the people that you invite will also disrespect it. And what happens is you might have a fabulous conference, but you won't get any long-term engagement. Because people will say, that was really great. Too bad the hosts weren't there. And that becomes the conversation instead of the outcomes of the day. What else? What are our other habits that we need? Commitment. Oh, by the way, I want to say something about support. We're also going to have to put our resources and not just our bodies into the event. I mean, whether that means finances or time or paper, whatever it means, we've got to bring some resource support to the event, because it won't happen on its own. And as much as we don't like to talk dollars and cents, I know that's not a problem here at Genesis, but in some communities, like, talking about money is like pulling teeth. But the reality is, movement doesn't happen until money marries a message. We've got a message. We just need money to marry it, because that's what starts movement. Okay, we've got some pretty concrete actionables that have come out of this conversation around religion. Now, let's talk about this. Interfaith. What does that mean? And when I say what does that mean, I'm asking a question about the scope of what interfaith means. Are we talking interreligious? Are we talking ecumenical? Are we talking about people of faith and people who would say of themselves that they were not of faith? We're saying all of the above. Okay, so is there a list that is housed at Genesis that says this is the interreligious community, this is the landscape of the interreligious community? That list doesn't exist. I might be able to help with that a little bit. Okay. No, voluntold. Okay, so this list has got to be curated. You got to cull a list, because when you're saying we're going to do interfaith work, what happens is we get the church mailing list out, and guess who's on it? Everybody exactly like us. And then we get there and we say, we have had an interfaith social justice conference, and we really just had a Centers for Spiritual Living social justice conference with maybe 3 Episcopals and 2 Presbyterians. It's not really interfaith. Oh, and the obligatory Jew. This is what we do. Rabbi so-and-so is representing the Jewish community. It's not how that works. Not how any of that works, right? Okay, so we're moving toward hosting this Interfaith Social Justice Conference in Seattle. Is that our doable? From 3 months of having a discussion on religion. You have to give up fear. Yes. You think? Yes. I think it's doable. Yes. A little bit. Yes, I will ride the roller coaster. Okay. She means tonight's conversation will. That is so much a part of our invitation. Yes, and a part of our doable, right? We're going to put this out there on the World Wide Web, and other people are going to say, there's this thing about head, there's this thing about heart, and there's this thing about habits. And let's have a whole nother conversation with head, hearts, and habits, right? Somebody will pick it up and they'll run, and we're changing the world. Yes? No? Okay. I'd like to think so. All right. This is a strong takeaway. I honestly think that my favorite part of these conversations is the third one. It's the takeaway. It's the what can we do. It takes a little work to get there, but I think by the time we've had 2 conversations, we're ready to do. And I'm really proud of this work. Now, this committee of 5, it's not going to happen if it doesn't have a launch date. When do you want to start the committee by? You want what, ma'am? You know what today is? No, I'm just asking if you were sure that you knew what today was, March 20th. Okay, so, no, 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 no. I want you to say April. Okay, Committee of Five is going to start in April. No later than April. Okay? That's going to be the launch, right? So the first meeting is going to be held where? Here at Genesis. First meeting at Genesis. No, my next thing wasn't to ask for a day. My next thing was to say, if the first meeting is at Genesis, the second meeting has to be off-site. Because, absolutely, second meeting at Seattle U, no problem. The reason I said this is if we're going to give up control, it has to be built into every phase of planning, preparation, etc. And by meeting 2, we should have some other people from other groups that are at least interested in partnering, right? Because meeting number 1, we're going to start talking about a list. By meeting number 2, we're going to say, yeah, Genesis is where this seed was planted, but let's begin to open it up. And I think Seattle U is a great place because it's neutral. It's everybody's space and nobody's space. It's liminal. And then from there we can move it to other organizations and other partners who will be voluntold that they're hosting. Yes? Okay. Any questions about this moving forward?
I'm excited.
Oh, like a progressive dinner, yeah. It could be a moving conference. Yes, I will resign from the committee because it will be a logistical nightmare. But it can happen. Like, I'm really, really for it. I'm also really, really not for planning it. But yes, go forward. Yeah, absolutely. I will be your biggest cheerleader. And I will actually come and participate. But I will not be interested in those logistics. I'm not a logistics guy. I have learned this. I used to think I was. The older I get, I am so not interested in logistics. Like, I'm here at ideation, and then I'm like, and you're off. Come back to me when the product is finished. Okay. Any other questions? Do we see a place that we have missed something? Yes, we're gonna come back to active listening. Does anybody need this? You need this? Come take a picture. That would be so great. I actually have something. This is my bag. I'm a bit of an absent-minded professor. Yes, I did. I told you that.
Brendan Murray or
Jerry Lewis.
Jerry Lewis or
Yeah, I'm the Jerry Lewis type. Mm-hmm. Okay. That's my bag.
Yes, it is.
It's my bag of tricks. And there's always wonderful things in my bag. And tonight I had something really great in my bag. I didn't know we were going to get here. Because I didn't know what the community was going to come up with. I just knew how we were going to get there. Isn't that funny? I also also don't do windows. You should know that. I do whiteboards well. I use them a lot. I love whiteboards. They want us to start teaching more classes online. My great chagrin is there are no whiteboards. And I love whiteboards. Okay. Active listening. So I put this in my bag. I didn't know we were going to get to it, but I'm really glad we did. I want to talk about the art of mindful inquiry. The art of mindful inquiry. And I want to give us some tools for active listening. And the first phrase I want to offer us as we do this work together is, what I heard you say was, which is very different from, you said such and such and such. And it takes a responsibility on your part that allows you to be wrong. And it gives the other person an opportunity to explain themselves further if there's misunderstanding. It also gives them an opportunity to double down and say, that's exactly what I said. You heard me, which is often my response to my daughter. That's what I said. I didn't stutter, and I said it clearly. And I want you to hear that that's what I said. So repeat it again, because that's what I said. But we get to say, what I heard you say was, and it's a way of giving a person the benefit of the doubt. Because what you're really saying to them is, I may have misunderstood. I may have this wrong. Or the message that I received quite possibly was not the message you intended. And so sometimes when we say what I heard you say, we don't repeat exactly what they said. They might say, I really hate pizza. And you say back to them, what I heard you say was you hate Italians. Because that's the message I received. And then they say, I didn't say that at all. Nor is that what I meant. And I'm not quite sure how that's what you heard, but let's go back. And what I'm saying is, any cheesy item that involves sauce is not what I would like to experience. Oh, okay, that's very different. See how we got out of that without conflict? What I heard you say. The second active listening tool I want to leave with you is, tell me more about what you meant. I had a woman come into my office at the church not too long ago, and she was just, I want to know blah, 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 blah. She was literally doing this. And so I knew by her body language and her demeanor and her question that she was there for some row or tussle or argument that I was not ever going to give her. And so I looked at her and I said, say more. Well, I said, blip, 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 blip. I said, yes you did. And I heard that. But I heard another question in your question. Is there one? I knew she didn't have the courage to say what she really was saying. No, I just want to know a little bit about. So I explained all about that, which really isn't what she came to my office for. I said, now, thank you so much for your questions. I'm going to go now. You have a lovely day. I just want to say, no, I don't want to hear. I've answered your question, and now we're done, right? Tell me more. Say more. Most of the time, you find a way to invite people right out of their fury when you ask them to really explain what it is they're so worked up about. I mean, we get really worked up, you know, and if you get worked up with them, you got a problem. But if you can invite them to explain more, sometimes you can diffuse it. The third is, I like this one. What angered you about what happened? I recognize that you're angry. I know you're upset. I see now that we're all worked up. There we are on 10, and here we are. Now, what angered you? Most of the time, people really just want to be heard. And the other part of the time, they have no idea why they want to be heard. They don't even know why they're angry. Like, can't remember, because it didn't really matter. In the grand scheme of things, it's kind of silly. And if you ask them, they don't want to tell you. But this is a great way to get through the conflict. This is an interesting one. What's familiar? About? It's another way of asking people, what's your trigger? What just triggered you? In this moment, what was really familiar for you? Because I see you're not even responding to what we're talking about. So something happened. You went somewhere. What's familiar in that? I had a student this quarter who finally wrote to me in their last paper and said, you know, I have to admit I hate men a little bit. And I thought, that explains most of this quarter. Here I have been a man the whole time. Now we understand these dialogues we've had in class. I've been standing up here being a man. All right. How did it affect you? It's a big one in interreligious dialogue, because sometimes people are all up in arms about something, and ultimately it really isn't about what they've exploded about. It's about how it affected them, right? How did you experience that? How did that affect you? It wasn't what they said, it wasn't what they did, it's how it affected you. So I went to a funeral last week, and I've been going to so many of those. I went to a funeral last week. It was a Catholic funeral. Has anybody ever been to a Catholic funeral? So you understand the dilemma here. Stand up, sit down. Stand up, sit down. Kneel, stand. Sit, stand, kneel. I thought, one more stand up, and I'm going to walk out of here. But the lady next to me looked at me and she said, I hate Catholics. Just under her breath, I hate Catholics. I said, knee problems or back problems? Both. She really does not hate Catholics, right? It was the standing and the sitting and the kneeling that affected her physically, that just frustrated everything in her, and she really was there to be support and to engage and to love the family. But that standing up, sitting down business, it was setting her in a fit, and I could see it because she started to grimace about the third sit down. She was, and I thought, knees or back, it's one or the other, right? How did that affect you? And then the sixth question we're going to ask during this whole process is, got ahead of myself, what do you need, want? What do you need or want in this moment, right? I don't want this group to be a part of this interfaith project because da-da-da-da-da-da-da. Well, you know, we have a commitment to openness. We're going to be inclusive. Everybody's welcome. We've invited them to the table. Well, okay, what do you need? What do you need? Ultimately, most people just need to be heard. They just need you to know it's uncomfortable for me. Okay, we recognize that and we hear that. And what do you want? Well, I want not to be uncomfortable. Impossible. Not going to happen. What can we do? What can we do for real? Right? Because you're going to be uncomfortable. And we're uncomfortable now. Now everyone's uncomfortable because we know you're uncomfortable and we don't want you to be uncomfortable. So we're all uncomfortable. What do we do now? How do we mitigate that? How do we move beyond it? Right? And we give people the opportunity to inform us how that's going to happen. This is what active listening is going to look like for us as we partner together. And this is what we're going to have to ask our partners to engage in as active listening. So we may actually have to prepare some literature that says this is the partnership agreement. We're going to put this on. Here's the partnership agreement. This is what active listening looks like. This is what openness looks like. This is what inclusivity looks like. And someone's going to have to do this. So I hope that one of you that's on the committee, one of the 5, is really good at this stuff with the fingers and the little machines that sit in front of us, because we're going to need. You're an amazing person with the fingers and the machine. Okay. Oh, wow. I bow. I know. I'm in awe. Yeah, if it doesn't happen up in here, it doesn't pretty much happen for me. These, not so good. You can see that. Not so good with these. Just kind of on the end of my arms, and I work them and we get by. Okay, any questions about active listening? No? We've done an amazing job tonight. We've gotten some great work done, and it didn't take us a long time to do it. It never does. That's how spirit works. Just kind of flows and goes. I really, really would like to thank you for your intellectual property. You've done an amazing job of moving us forward toward our April meeting here at Genesis. And what shall we call this committee? This committee needs a name. Why don't we brainstorm it? Everybody bring an idea to the first meeting. Because this committee can't go around being called the committee. It's a little mafia-esque. I'm a little afraid of that. So anyway, we need to call it something else. But I trust that Spirit will give that to us as well. Thank you so much for all of your hard work and fun work. And do you have a thought? You look like I don't want to leave with that thought in your head. Huh? At you? Yeah. No thoughts? Really? Your blankness is interesting to me. It's fascinating. Okay. It looks like there's like this really genius idea waiting to come out. And I'm like, don't take it home. Give it to us. Okay. All right. Not yet. It's coming then. It is percolating. Yes. And we will receive it when it comes to fruition. We will be all ears. Thank you so much. And we're now in the hands of Reverend Gayle. Thank you.
Well, thank you. Next month we start a 3-quarter talking about sexuality. I know. No, we're talking about sexuality, not sex. Well, you know, are we? Yeah. We're going to talk about it all. So to me it means, okay, that's good. No pole dancing okay. You do have that turned off, right? So what that means to me, Kim, and it's still percolating, obviously, sexuality to me meant people who choose to live life differently than the vanilla white heterosexual thing that I grew up with. So it's, and it's so fluid now, and it changes so much that, the LBTQ, which used to be the 4 letters, I think now is more like 6 or 7, and I just heard at a meeting that I went to that y'all is becoming a term that everybody is using now. I think Carol told me that her daughter uses y'all, because then it's not offensive to anybody. Rather than saying you guys or you girls or whatever, it's just you all. So that's getting behind that, and what does that mean? And so thank you all again. There's a basket in the back. Thank you, Bernie. If you would like to make an offering to thank Edward for his time and talent that he gives to us each month. So thank you so much, and thank you for being volunteer told or whatever I did. I love that. So let's just take a moment and give great thanks. Give great thanks for this evening, for everybody that showed up, for the intelligence in the room, for the brilliance that you all expressed, and for knowing that what we brainstormed less than 3 weeks ago is now starting to literally take form. And so I love, like Edward said, how spirit just moves. And so I am so grateful for this group and the foundation that we have started, and I am looking so forward to the manifestation of this in whatever form it takes. And so calling it good and knowing that we are all part of that, because we were here at the very beginning. I just say thank you, God, and so it is.